And so hopefully within a year's time, I'll be able to do a video like this and say my backlog no longer exists because I will have taken down every single game on my backlog.
Yeah, that that did not happen. Welcome back to the channel. In case you missed it, last year in July, I did a video creating a challenge where in 1 year's time, I would get rid of my entire backlog. Yes, I was venturing out to take down every single game in my backlog. And so while I may have taken the L on this challenge that I set out to do, I did learn a couple things. But before I get to those, be sure to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button if you like this video, and let's go over how many games I did beat over the last 12 months. Now, I've been keeping track of my entire progress over on the GG app. So if you are on the GG app, would love to connect with you. Link to my profile will be down in the description box below. But as I beat a game, I would go into the app, mark it as beaten, or if I completed it, which means getting 100% in the game or the platinum trophy equivalent, I would mark that as completed. But in the last 12 months, I'm happy to report that I did beat 34 games. I was hoping that number would be higher, but then again, that's kind of a lot, especially when you consider or factor in that some of those were JRPGs, and those take a really long time to finish. But on top of that, I also completed 10 games. That means I got 100% on those games or got the platinum trophy, and so that brings the total to 44 games. But halfway through the year, I think I realized that it just wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to get through my entire backlog. And that's when I began to start thinking about my backlog a little bit of a different way. I began to view it as a library of games, kind of like how people who are really into music look at their music library, or people that are really into movies look at their collection of movies as a library. I switched my thinking from it being this burdensome backlog to a liberating library. Was quite the alliteration. And as I was working through that, it empowered me to play through the games I was playing and explore as much of the game as I wanted to and enjoy it and really get the most out of it instead of trying to rush myself through to finish the game to get on to the next one. Leads into some of the things that I've learned over the last 12 months in regards to focusing on your backlog and taking it down. And I'm going to share 3 of those things with you in this video right now. The first thing you have to keep in mind as you set out to do this is you have to figure out, why are you wanting to take down your backlog in the first place? For me, I just was tired of looking at the piles and piles of games that I had both digitally and physically and wanted to make that number smaller. I wanted to have a more manageable backlog. Maybe for some of you, when you're thinking about going through your backlog, you have a similar idea in mind, or maybe you just want to not spend as much money on games, or you want to maybe go through a challenge where you finish a game on your backlog and then you sell it and make some of that money back. Whatever your goal is, you need to define what it is first and foremost, so that way in the days or weeks where it feels like a slog and you're having a hard time getting through the challenge, you can go back to why you're doing it and hopefully get energized to continue tackling your backlog or library of games. And the second thing I learned is knowing when to let go of a game. There's some games that you're going to play and you just don't really like them. They're maybe not matching kind of what you're interested in at the moment, or maybe they're just not that great of a game. And so you need to know when to let go of a game. I mean, part of pruning your backlog or clearing it out or cleaning out your library is knowing what games you're going to play and knowing what games you have no interest in playing. And this might be a little controversial, and if it is, y'all can feel free to disagree or agree with me down in the comments below, but I don't believe that just because you bought a game, you need to finish the game. You know, I was talking to a friend about this idea a while back, and he related it to, if you go to a restaurant and spend money on a food item and you don't like it, are you going to force yourself to finish it? Probably not. And it's the same thing with games or movies or any form of entertainment. Just because you spent money on it does not mean you have to finish it, especially if you're not enjoying whatever game it may be. So with that in mind, there's a lot of games that I cleared out of my library because I just wasn't enjoying them. And then there's some games that the ship had sailed on. For example, Metro Exodus is a game I've been meaning to play all year, and I just never got around to it. And I think at the end of the day, when I really examine myself, I just don't really want to play it. And so I'm not going to force myself to. I'm not going to worry about it, and I'm not going to let it hold me down. And this last one is kind of been my whole philosophy over the last 6 months. And the third thing I learned is stop looking at your backlog as a backlog. Look at it as a library. And here's what I mean by this. When I was looking at my games as a backlog, I felt like I needed to rush through my games to get to the next one so that way I could knock out these games off my backlog as quickly as possible. Problem with that is that I found myself burned out and I just wasn't enjoying any of the games that I was playing. When I made that switch to looking at them as my library, as a collection of games, the tension sort of lifted off of me and I was able to enjoy the games and explore them and do the side quests and see what the game had to offer to really get as much value out of the game that I thought would be there. And admittedly, there were times where I was like, okay, I've been playing this game for 20 hours. I'm ready for it to be over with. Let's finish this up. And this is just my opinion, but when you look at a collection of games or your backlog, so to speak, as a backlog, it tends to bring this sense of burden and it makes you or pressures you to get through the games as quickly as possible. And it just becomes kind of suffocating. But again, when I looked at my game or collection of games as a library, it was liberating. Again, there's that alliteration. And so I was able to move from one game to the next, but kind of at my own pace. And it wasn't really that big of a burden. And so that really led to me not completing my challenge. So I'll take the L on this challenge, but at the same time, I think I walked away with some lessons learned that I think could be of benefit to you, and hopefully you learn something from this. Now, if you're curious about some of the highlights of the games that I played over the last 6 months or year, really, I think you can see those in the playlist for this particular series called The Backlog. Some videos include Death Stranding, the Trails series, or at least Trails in the Sky. And so going forward, I'm still going to play the games in my library. I still want to finish them. But when it comes to doing videos about them here on the channel, I think you've noticed that I haven't really been keeping up to date with those each month. I've tried, but again, JRPGs take a really long time to play, especially Trails in the Sky games where I'm trying to get as much out of them as I can, at least without burning myself out. And so I think the format going forward, or at least what I'm going to try and do, is still do a big video review of a game that I've been playing for the last month or two, which is typically a JRPG, but then maybe throw in a video in there that talks about some of the smaller games that I'm playing. Maybe the shorter weekend adventure type of games, kind of like a short hike or even like an action type of platinum type of game. Probably going to talk about those a little bit, but those won't be as big or have as much production put into those as the big reviews do. With that in mind, it gives you an idea of kind of what I'm playing that month, especially if you're not listening to the podcast, which you totally should be listening to the podcast. There's a whole playlist of them here on the channel. So that way I can knock out kind of shorter reviews in a shorter time frame, and it just makes it a little bit easier to edit those together and then release those here on YouTube. So yeah, I didn't finish my challenge. I definitely failed, but I think I learned a few things along the way that have enriched my gaming time, and hopefully it has helped you here as you've watched this video and learned from my own lessons. But I'm curious, how are you doing? How is your backlog going? Have you done this challenge along with me? It's time for a yearly checkup. Let me know down in the comments of where you're at and how you view your backlog and just some general thoughts you have about gaming. With that being said, I'm still plugging away at Lost Odyssey. I hope to have that review out here in the next week or two. Doing a lot of the side stuff and getting to disc 4 has proven that it's a longer game than what I originally thought it was, but I'm excited to get to the end of the game and see how it all finishes up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on that video. Hit the like button on this video and definitely go check out the other videos in this backlog series and see what you think. But with that being said, thank you for watching and be a dear. Keep it locked here and I'll see you in the next video. Ain't nothing gonna break my stride. Ain't nothing gonna hold me down. Oh no, got to keep on moving.